Welcome to This Explainer. We share our modern world with an ancient monster. It doesn't hide under the bed, though. It hides, well, actually, scratch that. It operates right out in the open, in our bank accounts, our societal structures, and honestly, our deepest cultural anxieties. Today, we're diving into the fascinating evolution of Mammon, from an ancient word to a modern force, and tracing how this concept has quietly shaped human behavior for centuries. But before we unpack the massive economic disparities we see today, we really have to ask ourselves a pretty unsettling question. Are we all, right now, unwittingly serving an ancient master? To figure that out, we need to go back to the very beginning. So let's jump into Section 1, the birth of the demon. We're going to trace the exact historical moment a simple, everyday word transformed into a legendary antagonist. It all starts with the ancient Aramaic root Mammon. And surprisingly enough, this wasn't a bad word at all. It was completely morally neutral. No judgment, no fire and brimstone. It literally just signified wealth or material possessions. Just a completely mundane word for the stuff people owned. But, as you can probably guess, that neutrality definitely didn't last. In the Gospel books of Matthew and Luke, we see this massive, pivotal shift. With the phrase, "you cannot serve God and mammon," Jesus abruptly elevates the term from a neutral descriptor for stuff into a direct competing rival to God. All of a sudden, wealth wasn't just a possession anymore. It was a force demanding your absolute loyalty. Let's look at how this snowballed over the timeline. In the 1st century, it's introduced as a rival master. By the 4th century, early church fathers like Augustine are actively personifying mammon to warn their followers about the seductive power of greed. Then, fast forward to the Middle Ages, and the metaphor becomes entirely literal. Mammon is widely feared as a physical, demonic entity, a literal fallen angel ruling over earthly treasures. Moving right along to Section 2, the cultural caricature. Because as this entity grew in the public consciousness, literature and art absolutely couldn't wait to give this monster a face. This anxiety really permeated Renaissance thought, but it took on some wonderfully contrasting flavors. On one hand, Dante's Inferno gave us this terrifying guardian of the fourth circle, strictly punishing hoarders and wasters. On the other hand, John Milton's Paradise Lost gave us a highly nuanced, cynical fallen angel whose only obsession was mining precious metals in hell. Honestly, you could argue Milton's Mammon was history's very first crypto miner, completely blinded to any higher ideals by the sheer obsession with extraction. And visual artists? They took this paranoia even further. They cemented societal fears by painting Mammon as these grotesque figures dripping in gold and jewels. These weren't just decorative paintings. They were inescapable, terrifying visual reminders meant to show exactly what material greed does to the human soul. Okay, Section 3, the modern disguise. So, has the monster disappeared? Or did it just trade in the pitchfork for a tailored suit to operate invisibly among us today? Well, today, Mammon isn't some archaic demon. It is a deeply embedded societal mechanism. It thrives in our relentless pursuit of economic growth over basic environmental sustainability. It breathes through the commodification of pretty much everything, turning education, healthcare, and even human relationships into simple transactions. And it operates powerfully through a highly opaque, speculative financial sector that is, frankly, designed to benefit a select few. This modern disguise fuels a toxic cultural mantra: more is better. It's a system that actively prioritizes short-term profits over our long-term well-being. It constantly uses advertising to trap us in this exhausting cycle of perpetual dissatisfaction, where we're always just chasing the next acquisition. As a result, we are caught in a constant tug-of-war. Notice the sharp contrast here. Intrinsic human values, like genuine connection, creativity, and spiritual depth, are constantly being eclipsed by cold, extrinsic monetary worth. We're pressured every single day to prove our value, not by who we are, but strictly by our economic productivity and what we can consume. Which brings us to Section 4, the true cost. Let's take a hard look at the actual destruction this invisible force leaves in its wake. The true cost is devastating, and it hits us on two fronts simultaneously. On an individual level, this relentless pursuit breeds serious anxiety and stress. It erodes our relationships and leaves us feeling perpetually inadequate. But zoom out to the societal level, and the destruction multiplies. We're talking environmental degradation, widening social inequality, and systemic political corruption driven purely by the influence of money. And perhaps the most insidious consequence of all is the slow, cynical erosion of our ethical baseline. Think about it. When the absolute ultimate measure of human success is material wealth, our integrity suddenly becomes negotiable. It breeds a climate where crossing ethical lines doesn't just look tempting, it feels absolutely necessary to survive. All right, Section 5, defeating the demon. How do we actually fight back against a force woven into the very fabric of our economy? Defeating this requires a unified, step-by-step tactical approach. We can't just fix one area, we need a complete system overhaul. That means starting with individual mindfulness, scaling up to promote massive societal policies for equity, and fostering real ethical corporate business practices. It has to start from within. We arm ourselves against the endless cycle of consumerism by actively cultivating gratitude and mindfulness, by developing a strong sense of purpose that is completely independent of wealth, and fiercely resisting that artificial pressure to just acquire more. We take away the system's power over us. Societally, we have to support policies that actually value human life and ecological health over unchecked financial speculation. That means demanding real investments in education and healthcare, strengthening regulations to prevent corruption, and forcing transparency into the deepest, most opaque corners of the financial sector. Ultimately, neutralizing this ancient force demands constant vigilance. It comes down to conscious consumption, recognizing that, hey, while material wealth isn't inherently evil, prioritizing it above everything else absolutely will destroy us. We have to anchor ourselves to our deepest ethical values. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with one final provocative thought. Will you choose conscious consumption, or will you let Mammon dictate your true worth? It's a choice we make every single time we open our wallets. Choose wisely.